All right. Everybody got really quiet. It was awesome. All right, so we're going to finish up with dinosaurs and Noah's Ark. And so hopefully we'll have a little fun with this. Dinosaurs are always fun. If you want to learn more about dinosaurs, I'll actually be doing an entire dinosaur talk at Carluke tomorrow morning. And then we'll be talking fossil record here tomorrow night. So when we talk about dinosaurs and Noah's Ark, first of all, anybody have a favorite dinosaur? Yeah. I'm just glad he got that before you, because then, yeah. So, okay. Triceratops, okay. Triceratops is good. I like Triceratops. Anybody else? So what about T-Rex?
Yeah.
Pterodactyls.
You said that they're not technically dinosaurs, but Nessie.
Nessie from Loch Ness. Has anybody seen Nessie?
We all have.
There's, just so y'all know, people up in the front, 2 people raised their hand. I'm just saying.
Twice on a Sunday.
You've seen him twice on us. Did he come to church? Oh, he came to church. Okay. So interestingly enough, so here's the interesting thing. I don't talk about this in my dinosaur talk. So this is your special little Dave's rant. So there's a dinosaur that was supposed to be in the Congo called Mokele-Mbembe. And it was described as an apatosaurus dinosaur, which is a sauropod dinosaur. Big body, 4 legs, big long neck, big long tail. Right? And so these natives in the Congo kept saying that Mokele-Mbembe was out there, and he would roar, and he was in the river and stuff. And there was these people that come over, and they would try and find him. They couldn't say it. They couldn't find him, and they would say, well, maybe they're not describing it right. So they would show them pictures of alligators and show them pictures of hippopotamuses, and they showed them a picture of an apatosaurus, and they said, that's him. And so there was a university biologist who went out there, and he actually writes in a journal that he saw this dinosaur. And what he does, he describes the skin as a black, shiny skin. He says it's black and it shines in the sun. His head comes up. It's just that his head comes up out of the water. He can't see the full thing, but he talks about how he estimates how big the body is. There was, if you look at, there was a lady who took a picture of Nessie. I can't remember her name now. But she took a picture of Nessie. If you actually look at that picture, the skin is black and it shines in the sun, just exactly described the way the university biologist does about Mokele-Mbembe. So, just something interesting to think about. I'm not saying anything about it. It's just interesting to think about. So, dinosaurs and Noah's Ark. When we talk about dinosaurs and Noah's Ark, when you think about it, how many of you think that we date dinosaur bones? Raise your hand. Everybody's like, I know you. You're tricking me. I'm not raising my hand. Yeah. So do they date dinosaur bones? No. So Sam says no. And he's absolutely right. That's not what you would normally think, though, because they say, well, this dinosaur bone is 500 million years old. And you think, well, they had to have dated the dinosaur bone in order to know that it's 500 years old, 500 million years old. But that's actually not what they're doing. They're dating the rock around the dinosaur bone and then giving the date to the dinosaur bone itself.
Otherwise, they'll destroy the sample.
Well, that's fair. They can destroy the sample, but you can actually break a leg bone open and still have plenty left over. You can actually carbon date a dinosaur bone. Here's the kicker with the carbon date. I'm going to get into my tomorrow's talk, but carbon dating, when you look at carbon dating, it's done on organic materials. You can only detect carbon-14 up to 80 to 100,000 years old. I want to join in. You can only detect carbon-14 to between 80,000 and 100,000 years old. So anything over 100,000 years old, you should not be able to detect carbon-14. Take a wild guess how many things we have found carbon-14 in. Everything, okay? We found it in diamonds. We found it in coal. We found it in dinosaur bones. We found it everywhere. We have a paddlefish up on our wall at ICR that's a fossil that we purchased. And we actually found collagen, or the organic material. We sent it off to be carbon dated. It came back at 33,000 years old. Now, a paddlefish was supposed to have died off tens to hundreds of millions of years old. They should be way dead, and we got 33,000. The problem with C14 is that we're in equilibrium now. Dr. Cleary could explain this even more. I won't bore you with the details, but we're in equilibrium now. We would not have been in equilibrium, so we're always going to get an accelerated date. You'll never see anything between 10 and 20,000 years old normally. You're either going to see something from 0 to 10 or 20 or on normally. So, and that's actually when you talk about dinosaurs, when we talk about this dinosaur talk, we actually go through C14 dating, and I show you actual examples that they've carbon-14 dated and show you the average dates on it and talk about that. So anyway, so they don't date the dinosaur bones. How do they know if dinosaurs had feathers? How dare you, sir? So yeah, I mean, they don't really. Well, they think they do. There's reasons why they say they have feathers, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. You think about it, Velociraptor. Are we talking about the Velociraptor or the Velociraptor? I mean, take a look at this real quick. Do I have sound here? Oh, I don't. That's all right. I mean, if not, you can still be scared in silence. Just so you know, that's how I scream too. So this is the Velociraptor in Jurassic Park. The Velociraptor. Uh-huh. So this is Jurassic Park 3. Okay. First of all, how did they know that the dinosaur was smart enough to go, hey, there's a hole up there. I think I'll climb. Okay? Second of all, that's not a velociraptor. That's actually this guy, Deinonychus. Okay? So a velociraptor is very different. A velociraptor is about the size of a chicken. Okay? They're less than 2 feet tall. Now they can be, with their tail and everything, be 7 feet. But they're less than 2 feet tall. But unfortunately, that velociraptor wouldn't be quite as scary as the one you saw. So they actually modeled it after a different dinosaur, but called it velociraptor because it sounded cool. Okay? And that's part of the problem with Jurassic Park, is that is actually driven by Jack Horner. Jack Horner is a famous, dinosaur hunter and paleontologist, blah, blah, blah. And so they used him to consult on Jurassic Park, right? And his theory was that dinosaurs turned into birds. That's his thing. He wants you to believe that dinosaurs turned into birds. They evolved. And that's why when you watch Jurassic Park, watch how the velociraptors move. They'll move their head like a bird. They walk like a bird because he told them to make them walk like a bird, because he wants you to believe that. Take a wild guess why they have feathers on the dinosaurs in this latest one. Because Jack Horner wanted them to show you that they had feathers so he could say they evolved into birds. So it is pure imagination. It really is. So the velociraptor is really, it can be up to 7 feet long. It's about 1.5 feet tall, maybe 30 pounds. It's like a dog, about the size of a dog, really. And it would eat small animals like reptiles, amphibians, things like that. There actually is some evidence that they could attack like a protoceratops. So protoceratops is it looks like a baby triceratops. As a matter of fact, in China, I'm always talking about my dinosaur talk. In China, they created little figurines, and they actually created this, looks like a little triceratops, but it has no horns. And so us Americans, we were like, haha, that's so cute. They don't know that it's supposed to have horns. Until we dug up a protoceratops and realized, oh no, they'd actually seen one. They knew what it looked like. We were stupid. Okay, that's cool, So they actually found a protoceratops and a velociraptor in a death clinch. And this is actually at our Discovery Center. This is Dr. Brian Thomas. He's the one that you saw that was at the Coconino Sandstones. And so this is actually a protoceratops on top of, a velociraptor on top of a protoceratops. And they actually found that fossil with them in this death clinch. And now that's a representation of it. It's not the actual one. So that's a little baby velociraptor. But do they have feathers? That's the real question. We need to take a look at that, because why do they need to have feathers for an evolutionist? So that we can say that they evolved into a bird, right? That's why they need to have feathers. Otherwise, you could look at a lot of the fossils and just go, well, that's a bird, and that's a dinosaur. I mean, it's pretty simple to tell, okay? So did dinosaurs have feathers? Well, here's the reason why. To be fair, I don't want to just, make fun of anybody. I want to show you what they're talking about. There's protofeathers. So protofeathers are these little things here. It's like these little wrinkles around the bones. Well, the problem is that you can get that with decay. When the skin decays, you can get that. It's the collagen fibers coming apart. And so we found that you can get that. So protofeathers are not really a thing. You can get quill knobs. They actually used to think that velociraptors had feathers because of quill knobs. So there's these little holes along the bone. And this is on the forearm of the velociraptor, these little bitty arms. They found these holes and they said, they had to have feathers. Well, of course, their arms aren't long enough to actually fly. And so then they came up with the theory, well, it must have been something to cool them, or like a peacock. Maybe they used it for mating, to attract a mate, something like that. So total guess upon total guess upon total guess, right? So the problem is that mammals have these too. It's where your tendons attach to your bones. And so it's not as if that's the only reason you can have those little nobules there. There's actually good reasons why you would have them. But because they are so determined that dinosaurs have to have feathers, they're going to use anything they can to try and convince you that dinosaurs have feathers. And so they want to have T-Rex turn into a bird, right? Until one day you're eating a large T-Rex. So the idea here is Dr. Thomas actually wrote this in an article. He says, finally, quill knobs may play a role in a circular argument, beginning with the premise of dino to bird evolution. Secularists jump to the conclusion that bone bumps mark feather anchor points without objectively evaluating the ample evidence against this idea. They then link quill knobs to feathers and feathers to becoming bird-like. The conclusion, dinosaurs evolved into birds. So that's where they come up with it. And so did dinosaurs have feathers? No. There was a lot of birds there. They've actually found them. There was Archaeopteryx, and there's some other birds that they found. And they said, this is the perfect transition that from dinosaur to bird, okay? And then they said, it was becoming a bird. This is the one. Well, then they went 70 million years earlier, and they found actual birds. And they're like, that blows that idea. There are already birds around, so it's not really a transition, okay? So you just have to keep looking, and you find the truth. So the velociraptor, while cool, is not really that big, mean dinosaur you see on Jurassic Park. What about sauropod dinosaurs? Anybody like sauropod dinosaurs? Like big body, big long neck, big long tail? Okay, one person. Wow. Poor sauropod dinosaurs. I mean, they deserve some love too, okay? So you guys, for those of you that pray, can pray for me, because Monday I go to Carlisle, England. And I'll show you why that's important here in just a minute. It's kind of cool. So sauropod dinosaurs were massive. So in Job 40, God describes his prime handiwork, and I believe that you will see that it is a sauropod dinosaur. This is a Supersaurus. It's kind of like McDonald's supersized me there, Supersaurus. So he was massive compared to all these other dinosaurs. And in Job 40, it says this, take a look at Behemoth, which I made just as I made you. It eats grass like an ox. See its powerful loins and the muscles of its belly. Its tail is as strong as a cedar. The sinews of its thighs are knit tightly together. Its bones are tubes of bronze. Its limbs are bars of iron. And it is a prime example of God's handiwork, and only its creator can threaten it. It is not disturbed by the raging river, nor concerned when the swelling Jordan rushes around it. No one can catch it off guard or put a ring in its nose and lead it away. There's only one creature that we've ever heard of that could be described that way. A tail like a cedar tree, a big massive tree swaying back and forth. Okay, that's not a hippopotamus. That's not an elephant, right? There's only one creature, and that's a sauropod dinosaur. Whether it's a brachiosaurus, a patasaurus, Argentinosaur, or whatever you want to call it, it's a sauropod dinosaur. And I think this is the coolest part, that you find a lot of these in art. And you actually find these in art, and I'll show you that here in just a second, because you think about it, something that's like 70 feet long, or sometimes 120 feet long, something that weighs 10 tons, don't you think people are going to be like, yeah, I've seen that thing, yeah. And then they put it in art because everybody's seen this huge, massive beast. And God says, yeah, that's my prime handiwork. You like it? You know? I mean, it's cool. And you think about it, even in museums, these sauropod dinosaurs are always the biggest attraction. People are always standing around looking at these big, huge sauropod dinosaurs in every museum. Now, Argentinosaurus was arguably one of the largest. Now, a lot of this stuff is estimations based off the bones that we find. But they would say that Argentinosaurus was over 120 feet long. It was 6 stories high and 10 tons. That would be massive, okay? You want to know why dinosaurs died out? If you had a village and you had a family, you had cousins and aunts and stuff like that, and a sauropod dinosaur comes running to your village, what are you going to do? You're going to kill it off or run it off, right? That's why dinosaurs died off. Number one, their food supply was already destroyed during the flood, right? You're now fighting with dinosaurs for the room and the space. You're going to kill them off or run them off. And so some of them went off into caves probably. And we actually find when they, what was his name? There was a king who went into India, brought his troops into India, and he actually writes that his troops would not go near the caves because they were scared of the monsters in the caves. Big, scaly beasts that you don't want to cuddle with, right? That's what a dinosaur is. That's what a dragon is, really, when you think about it. So what did they eat? They ate plants and fruits. They were vegetarians, right? In the Garden of Eden, all the dinosaurs would have eaten plants and fruits, okay? As even today, when we look at meat eaters, like lions, there's lions that will eat nothing but fruit. We have lions that will eat nothing but fruit. I mean, there's nothing stopping meat eaters from eating vegetation, okay? Other than that, barbecue is much better. Other than that, you know? So how could you fit, I mean, if you got a sauropod dinosaur, 120 feet long, 10 tons, 6 stories high, how do you fit a sauropod dinosaur on the ark? A baby one. That's just crazy talk. I mean, are you saying that young dinosaurs aren't as big as old dinosaurs? You're absolutely right. You think about it. How do you fit? Yeah. You think about it. You got the global flood. You got Noah's Ark on there. And, of course, that's not the Noah's Ark we're talking about, is it? We already talked about that. When we talk about Noah's Ark, we're talking about a massive ship. That thing would have been around 450 to 510 feet long. And that's about 1 1/4 soccer fields. Okay? That's pretty long. Okay? And then you've got 75 feet wide and you've got 45 feet high. There were 3 levels to this ark. Okay? As a matter of fact, they actually sent all the data to a shipbuilder. It was actually this associate. His name is, let's see here, Shearer and Associates. He looked at the length to depth ratio, the stability, everything, and this is what he wrote back. He said, therefore, from the information supplied, it is my opinion that the ark is structurally sound and has sufficient stability and buoyancy for the cargo carried. So taking into account how many animals he would have had to have in there, what the actual structure would have looked like, how long it would have floated, he said, yeah, it actually works. There's actually a university in Leicester who Dr. Thomas worked with, and they went through the same stuff. They said, hey, what's the length to depth, and how many animals would they have to be on there, and could they actually build this thing, and would it actually float? They came to the same conclusion. Yeah, it'll float. It's stable. It'll work. And so the ark itself is stable. How do you get the animals on there? Well, you're absolutely right. When you think about those big animals, think about it this way. Y'all start naming big dinosaurs. Brontosaurus, okay. So that's a sauropod.
T-Rex.
That's a sauropod. T-Rex, that's a theropod dinosaur. Stegosaurus, okay. What is it? So that's a sauropod. What else? What about Triceratops? Triceratops. Ankylosaurus. Allosaurus, so that's a theropod. Pterodactyl, that's a flying reptile, technically not a dinosaur. Anybody else? So we've gotten 5 dinosaurs in before we ran out of large dinosaurs. The average size of a dinosaur is about the size of a chicken. Would be a flying reptile, so a pterosaurus or something like that, which is commonly known as a dinosaur, you know. There's still some flying around? I don't know where you live, but I'm not going where you live. I'm just saying. So they've actually had a record of. What did you say about a chicken? Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we've actually got record of, in Papua New Guinea, of people seeing pterodactyls or pterosaurs. Okay? They actually had an article in the San Antonio newspaper, like in the 70s. They had a sighting of a pterosaur, of a pterodactyl. So, I mean, we've seen these things, okay? And Nessie, hello, all right? Now, here's the interesting thing. It's not just Nessie. There's one in New York. There's Lake Champlain. There's the same creature was in Lake Champlain as in Loch Ness. So how do you get the dinosaurs on the ark? Well, you've got, let's see here. We've got some young ones over there. I'm pretty sure your dad's bigger than you. Is that true? Yeah. So here's a question. If I wanted to take animals on the ark, and I'm going to need them to repopulate the earth, and they're going to take a year-long cataclysmic trip on a boat, and then I need them to go ahead and have kids when they get off that boat. Am I going to bring a 70 and 80-year-old dinosaur, or am I going to bring a teenage dinosaur? I'm going to bring a teenage dinosaur, that's right. So you think about it. You want to bring the young sauropod dinosaur, the young elephant. And that doesn't even matter. A little chihuahua, that doesn't matter. You can put that in, you can squeeze that into anywhere you need to, but that's not even really a dog, to be honest with you. So that's just up from a cat. That's even. If you can get scared by a cat, you're not even a dog. I had friends who actually I had some friends that had a chihuahua they named him Goliath. That is so wrong. It's just like mocking him. They call him Goliath. That's horrible. When I was young, I had big ears. My sister used to call me Dumbo. That's not nice. That's mean. So, but it's just one of those things where you're going to bring the young ones. They're going to survive the trip better, and when they get off the boat, they're going to be able to populate the earth better, right? And so it's logical. And so you think about it this way. How much space was on the ark? Does anybody have an idea? A lot. Excellent. That is correct.
That's the technical term.
That is the technical term. A boatload. Oh. Don't encourage him. Don't encourage him. He gets that from his father, I can tell you that right now, having spent a week with him. But so, okay. So Noah's Ark, we said, is 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet high. You have 3 levels. You have 3 decks to it. You would actually have, if you were to look at a boxcar, a train boxcar, so you think about it. They used to carry sheep in boxcars, right? You can actually double deck a boxcar and you can get 240 sheep in it. 240 sheep. When you look at the average size of an animal based off of smaller dinosaurs, smaller horses, smaller elephants, you're probably looking about the size of a sheep. And so that's 240 sheep in a boxcar double deck. Now that's pretty tight, don't get me wrong. That's pretty tight. But think of it this way, 240 sheep. But then you've got, I wish I could actually do 240 sheep. I'd just sit there and watch it. You think about it, you've got all these boxcars. Noah's Ark could actually hold over just about 570 boxcars worth of volume. That's how much stuff it could fit. 570 boxcars. You ever watch a train go by? And about 14 in, your eyes start glazing over? Think of 570 of those things. 570. Now think of it this way, though. If you think about it, depending on how many animals you think you have, because remember, you didn't have to have all the fish and everything that swam in the ocean. You didn't have to have some of the insects, probably. You had to have birds and things that creeped on the ground, like the animals themselves, including dinosaurs. And so you could have, there's estimates anywhere from 2,000 animals all the way up to 145,000 animals, okay, that you would have to fit on the ark. But you think about it, if you look at that average of 240 animals in per boxcar, think about it. If you're just like 8,000 kinds, because remember, if you have dogs, right? You understand dogs are the same kind, so it doesn't matter whether it's a just above a cat, a Chihuahua, or like a German Shepherd or a Great Dane, or something like that. They're all part of the dog kind. I just need 2 dogs. That's it. I just need 2 cats. Okay, things like that. So you got to think of it that way. So the amount of animals that you're actually going to need on the ark is much less than species that you're counting, right? So you think about it this way. Let's say it's 8,000 different kinds. If you have 16,000, you're probably only going to use maybe this many boxcars, just for the animals, understanding an average 240. If you go to 145,000 animals, now what they do is they do 138,000 that are amphibians, reptiles, very small things, so you would double up. You could probably double the amount. If you did 145,000 animals, you would probably use about this many. So you still got all these boxcars for food, food, humans, maybe the humans were animals. So you've got all that space, right, for water and food and all that stuff. Except, I forgot, that's not all the boxcars. That's only 346. You still have all these as well. Was there enough space on the ark? Mm-hmm. Absolutely there was. Absolutely there was. And so that's how you fit dinosaurs on the ark. What about this one now? Stegosaurus is I don't know if it's my favorite, but he's kind of in the running for my favorite. Mostly because you can say steggy. So, if you look at a Stegosaurus, he means roofed lizard or covered lizard because he has those 2 rows of spikes on his back. And here's the reason why I chose this guy for this one. You think about it, Stegosaurus, he's up to 9 meters long, so 30 feet. He's up to 14 feet tall, weighs 2 tons. Okay? He's been eating too much haggis. Okay? That's what it is. Believe me, these pants used to fit me until this week, and I ate all the haggis and fish and chips. So, but again, he ate plants and fruits, right? And so he was a nice guy. You didn't have to worry about him. And so those spikes were basically, those plates were basically for protection for a theropod, like a Tyrannosaurus Rex coming to chomp down on him. It would protect him. They also wonder if maybe those plates would have regulated heat. And so if there's blood vessels through those plates, it could have, like when he's in the shade, it could have cooled off the blood, and then as it ran through the blood, it would have cooled him off, things like that. So there's all kinds of different theories on that. So the question is, did dinosaurs die 66 million years ago? You notice we always say 65 million years ago. They actually updated it. For some reason, I don't know why, evolutionists now decided it's 66 million years ago. So we just say it that way. So 66 million years ago, did they die out? Well, let me ask you this. In National Geographic in 1993, there was an article in the Geo Guide where the author said this: no human being has ever seen a live dinosaur. Now, does he know that or does he think that? He thinks that way. Somebody said knows it, somebody said thinks so. Why does he think that? He's never met every human. He would have to know every human that ever lived in order to know that no human being has ever seen a live dinosaur. That is correct. You think about it. Let me ask you this. Can you draw me a Farselblatt? Well, can you? No. Why not? You've never seen a Farselblatt, right? Now, at the same time, if I went into your house, I mean, not in a creepy way, you invited me. I went into your house and saw you had drawn a picture of a giraffe. I would know that you have seen a giraffe. Now, in today's time, we might see it on internet, magazine, TV, movies, something like that. But if I go back 1,000 years where there's no internet, TV, magazines, newspapers, anything like that, how would they know how to draw a giraffe? They would have to have seen a giraffe, right? We can do the same thing with dinosaurs. You think about it. If we take a look at dinosaurs, we can do the exact same thing. If we go over 700 years ago to cave paintings, and you have this dinosaur, big body, 4 legs, tail, and a scoop shape to its head with 3 horns. What is that? Triceratops. That's right. It's a Triceratops. Doesn't take a paleontologist to know that, right? What about this one over in Utah? Big body, big long tail, big long neck. What's that? Sauropod dinosaur. That's right. Doesn't take a paleontologist to know this. And yet, this is over 700 years ago that they're drawing these. How did they know what a sauropod dinosaur looked like? How did they know what a Triceratops looked like unless they had seen a Triceratops and a sauropod dinosaur? That's how they would know. If you go over to England, remember I told you I was going to go to Carlisle, England. This is why it's important. Okay, some of you already knew. So Bishop Bell died in Carlisle, England. On his tomb is a brass inlay. In that brass inlay, you have all kinds of everyday animals. Everyday animals, pigs, bats, fish, dogs, things like that, and these 2 sauropod dinosaurs. How in the world in the 1400s did they know to draw 2 sauropod dinosaurs unless they had seen sauropod dinosaurs? That's on the brass inlay in Bishop Bell's tomb. They actually have a carpet over it, and they will not let you see it if you tell them you're a creationist. So you have to tell them that you're interested. There is actually something really cool. They're going to watch this and know who I am. There's on the bottom of the seats, there's actually really cool carvings. And this kind of brass inlay is very rare. It's one of the last surviving brass inlays like that. It's on the floor. You walk over it every day. That's why they put a carpet over it. So I'm going to try and go in there and just tell them I want to see it. Yeah, I want to see the brass inlay and just video it so I'm not taking a picture of anything in particular. So y'all pray for me. If y'all pray, you pray for me. See if I can get in there. We'll see. So yeah, 2 sauropod dinosaurs. It's not hard to understand that. If we go over to Egypt, there's actual sauropod dinosaurs here. Remember I said that sauropod dinosaurs would have been the biggest, baddest thing alive. Everybody would have been doing pictures of it. They would have been doing sculptures of it. Remember I said over in China they make statues. Here's the little Protoceratops statues that they created. And we thought they were silly because we thought, they tried to make a Triceratops. They just didn't know. And then we dug up the Protoceratops and went, never mind. So if you go ahead and go into Cambodia, this is the interesting. We talked about Stegosaurus. This is actually Angkor Wat Temple, and at the back of that temple, there's this column, and on that column is like monkeys and water buffaloes and all kinds of everyday animals, including this thing right here. Has plates on its back, long tail, 4 legs, big body, and a horse-like head. What is that? Stegosaurus, yeah, absolutely. They've actually taken that around to kids and said, hey, what is this? All the kids said it's a Stegosaurus. There's a famous evolutionist who's very vehement, very angry man. And I'm sorry, I apologize. He's a very angry man. And he said, well, it is clearly just a sunrise behind the animal. That's what it is. Okay. All right. Sunrise behind the animal. That's fine. So, and then if you go over to Chile, over to South America, you can actually find these woven into fabrics. Here they are, big body, 4 legs, big long neck, big long tail. Everybody knows how to make these hundreds and thousands of years ago. How do they know? Unless they had seen these things. And we'll go ahead and end up here in Egypt, Israel. In Israel, at a temple, at the bottom of the column, there is this sculpture. Looks like some kind of horse thing, some kind of theropod dinosaur or bird-looking thing, and it's something that's really tall with a little bitty arm and a big head chomping down on that. What does that look like? Like a T-Rex dinosaur, huh? Now, how in the world did they know in Israel how to sculpt a T-Rex unless they had seen a T-Rex? See, the thing is, that guy says, no human beings ever seen a live dinosaur. Absolutely. I mean, we just have no clue. We don't have any evidence of dinosaurs at all, do we? We can't look at art and find them, but yet we can. We know that dinosaurs lived there. So that's dinosaurs and Noah's Ark, and we'll open it up for questions.
You want to do the cards first?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Can I ask a question about the dinosaur thing?
Absolutely.
When did people start calling dinosaurs dinosaurs? Like, how were they discovered so that modern day people know what they look like?
If you come to Carl Luke, I'll tell you. No. In 1841, Sir Richard Owen coined the term dinosaur, meaning terrible lizard. And so prior to that, so that's part of the concept is, what were they called prior to that? Well, there's a word in Hebrew that's tenin, and then the other word that everybody used was dragon, right? Well, what is a dragon? A dragon was a big, scaly beast that you don't want to cuddle with, okay? Well, what's a dinosaur? A big, scaly beast that you don't want to cuddle with, okay? And so as we actually throughout history, see, you're going to do the whole talk. Throughout history, we read about people that have described dinosaurs, like Triceratops and Stegosauruses and things like that. And so we see them in history as well. So, all right. Let me look at these cards real quick. Well, go ahead. Yeah. Say that again.
What do you believe in the chronological timing of the book of Job when it talks about four-footed beasts in existence, and then to the time where before Noah, the flood? Do you believe that it's a book before?
So do I think Job is before the flood?
Yeah.
I've never been asked that before. Let me think about that. That's a good question. Let me think about that. Yeah, go for it.
I believe Job was written approximately about the time of Abraham or Abram. So he would have been a contemporary of Abram, so obviously after the flood. That's what most believe as far as the time frame.
He is actually in one of the genealogies. Well, he's dead, it's Joab or something like that. People believe that this is actually Job and one of those genealogies.
All right, sorry, I'm going through these real quick. Holy cow. What was the ethnic group of Jesus? Well, he was a Jew. He was a Semitic Jew because, well, the Bible tells us he was basically. So, that's, I don't know. And then, does it really matter what I believe about the first 11 chapters of Genesis if I believe Jesus died for my sins and rose again? Jesus didn't ask if people believed in Noah. That is true. He did not ask if they believed in Noah. He does reference the flood, though. I would say this. Are the first 11 chapters of Genesis a salvation issue? If you're already a believer, and this is Dave talking, okay? If you're already a believer, then yeah, it really doesn't, honestly. It's not a salvation issue necessarily. It becomes an authority issue at that point. Because if most of the doctrines of the Bible are rooted in the first 11 chapters of Genesis. And so if you want to go in there and start saying, well, we don't have to believe in this, we don't have to believe in that in Genesis, now suddenly you're throwing out the basis of all the main doctrines of the Bible, including marriage, including male and female, including all this kind of stuff. Sin, everything. And so it becomes an authority issue in a very real sense, because I think somebody said something about, they said, well, I don't see why you can't believe in evolution and stuff, and, you know, God created and then he used evolution. Well, it's not really about what God could have done. God could have done anything. It's about what God said he did. And and so we have to go back to his word to understand that. And so here, the problem really comes in, and this is my personal belief, the problem really comes in when you're talking about an unbeliever. Because if you're a believer saying, you don't have to worry about that whole Genesis thing, you know, y'all just believe in Jesus. Well, but if I'm an unbeliever and I look at a book that has the first 11 chapters that I don't really need to believe in, that aren't real, why am I believing in a book? Why am I believing in this book? And so now it's starting to affect salvation. It's starting to affect salvation. And so I think it's real flippant when Christians say, yeah, you don't have to worry about the first 11 books of the Bible because we just believe in Jesus. We're going to believe in Jesus. We're going to point people to Jesus, you know, stuff like that. Yeah, but it's a stumbling block now. And the other thing is, you think about it, back in Genesis, what does Genesis tells us? If I run up to an unbeliever on the street and I say, you're a sinner and you're going to hell, is that very effective? No. I mean, people have gotten saved that way. I've got friends that were yelled at and they did eventually come to Christ, but it's not very effective. Because people need to understand that it's a loving God that created them. It was us that messed it up. And then that loving God made a way for us to have a relationship with him. He's the one who did everything for us. Even though we were sinners, he made the way. And so I think the first 11 chapters of the Bible are absolutely necessary. I think it's the only way you make the gospel make sense, to be honest with you. Is it a salvation? Can I look at a Christian who believes in Jesus and say it's a salvation issue, not for them, but it becomes a real stumbling block and a real issue for someone who's searching and looking for Christ? Yeah.
Does Genesis really give us a story of why we did the Savior in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Because it's sin coming into the world, and then there's verses that say, that show God has already had a plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it becomes a real stumbling block. So, good question. Why the segment has already been laying underground should be only 10 years. Oh, so the 10 years, so Mount St. Helens. So how did we know that segment was 10 years old? It's because, so we see different lava flows. You can actually tell the different lava flows. So we knew that it erupted in 1980, and there was another one in 1986. And so that top basalt is the one that they actually tested. So that flow would have been 10 years old. If they had dug underneath and gotten down below it, then it would have been older, and you would have had to have figured that out. Now, part of that radioisotope dating, stuff like this, what they go back and do is they find that, I think they did potassium argon on Mount St. Helens, if I remember correctly. And they found, of course, when they got 2.8 million years old, the conventional scientists were like, we need to figure out why this is. And so what they found was that there was extra argon that was coming up from underneath. And so it was giving extra daughter element, or daughter isotope, rather than the parent. So when you inflate the daughter, it seems like there was more there, that longer times have been passed. And so then they say, okay, well, it's because there's extra argon. That's why it was. Well, how do you know you didn't have extra argon for all the others as well? So it's a real problem. Yeah.
So just along that lines, do you know anything concerning like the same kind of situation you have like in Hawaii, where you have actually current active lava flows? So this new material is being built, and then it dries and it hardens only days, months, years old, and they test it in a similar manner, and get a long
I haven't read a study on that at this point, and so I would hesitate to pretend like I know. But my guess is going to be that it's the same concept, is that you're getting extra argon or you're getting an extra of that daughter element that they're not accounting for. Because all radioisotope dating is based on 3 assumptions that they can't prove. One is how much of the parent and daughter isotopes were there originally. I'll get you in a second. Originally, and then by the time you actually have it decay, you get to the actual date. But if you cannot truly understand those 3 assumptions, then you can't actually say. Now there is isochron age, and so they actually average it out, which does work based off the evolutionary time frame. And so there is some evidence that they can get close, but they cannot prove that. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, how would you still insist that the lava that comes out is just like a new thing? Because what you're saying right now and what Dan just said about Hawaii is that when you've got a volcanic eruption, the like segment that comes out, right, it's just a new thing. But why do you think it's a new thing? It's why? Because if it's been laid underground for like however long you want it to be there, it doesn't matter however long it was there. What matters is why would you call it a new thing and date it as a new thing if it's been there because it came out of the ground.
Yeah. So it has to do with the radioisotopes that they're testing. And I'm probably going to fail at giving you the technical data on it, but the concept is that it doesn't start decay until it hits outside. And so it's timing the decay. Once it comes outside, it comes up out as a basalt lava flow. And so there actually is a reason why they're saying that it's that time, because the decay rate starts at that time. And so I can get you some more of the technical information as to why it doesn't start down below, but it does start once it comes out in the flow itself, those radioisotopes.
Okay.
Let me look at the next card. Is there evidence for a singular continent, i.e. Pangea? Did the flood cause these to move apart? No, that's silly. No, yes. So Dr. Clary, our geologist, so he's worked with Dr. Baumgartner, who they talk about, not hydroplate, but plate tectonics. So talking about how the bursting forth, that ripping apart. So the concept is that you would have plate movement. Right now, the plates are constantly moving, but at such a slow rate, it's almost indetectable. It would be like the amount of your fingernail, you know. And so in the flood, though, because you're having all the volcanism and all the earthquakes and all the tsunamis and everything, you would have had super speed movement, comparatively, super speed movement of those plates. And so they would have broken apart. So yes, you're absolutely right. There is evidence. And you can get Dr. Clary's book on called Carved in Stone. And so it's all his evidence of the global flood, and I believe it includes the evidence on the plate tectonics as well. So, the biggest deception Satan ever, I think, performed was to make man think Satan did not exist. Is that true? I don't know that. This isn't really a creation question, but I would say this. I think one of the greatest deceptions that Satan ever performed was in Genesis. Did God say? Right? So Eve says, well, God said that, I can't eat of the fruit. I can't even touch it, which she adds to what God actually says. But then the devil says, Satan says, did God really say that? Or does he just not want you to know? Does he not want you to live forever? So the deception is questioning God. That's the greatest deception, because that's what we're facing on a daily basis. with gender. You know, Christians who are struggling with the whole gender thing, gender fluidity, and they go, well, did God really mean this? I mean, did God really say this? Like I said, God was the designer. He gets to be the definer. And so if he says there's only male and female, there's only male and female. Biology says that, right? And so all these things are deception from the enemy of, did God really say? Like, go back and read the Bible. Did he really say? I mean, I had an argument with a girl who was a lesbian. I met her in a car shop. That's not a joke. I mean, I literally was in a car shop, and she was talking to me about God, and I was witnessing to her and stuff, and she was like, well, you need to go back and read the Bible because God approves of lesbianism. Like, well, I'm pretty sure I've read the Bible, and I don't remember that part. And so, I mean, I followed up with her. I said, hey, if you go promise to read, I can't remember what I told her to read. And she said, well, you need to read this book. So I read that book, and we talked again and stuff. But, it didn't go anywhere per se. But, that's the deception. Did God really say this? So. Could the Big Bang not have occurred when God said, let there be light? I mean, the concept that if there's a Big Bang, there's got to be a Big Banger, right? I mean, in that sense, possibly. But again, I think it goes back to, I think you've got to be careful. You've got to go back to not asking what could God have done and asking what did God say he did. And then we trust that. That's what we trust. There's just a few more here. Roughly, how old is the earth, universe, according to biblical creation? I mean, we date that basically, it really has less to do with creation and more about the genealogies in the Bible. The genealogies show, depending on how you view it, it's usually around 6,000. Some will go up to 10,000, somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 years old. I try to leave that open a little bit just for fun, I guess, but yeah, somewhere around there. When did I swear that says, when did the Dave come from? Wait, what? Wait, when did the come from? Think we sign for the time. And the next question is, I apologize. If you'll come tell me what that question is, I promise you I'll answer. What is the most important chapter in the Bible? Genesis. If there is design of adaptability, then why are humans different? Well, I think we kind of covered that in the Tower of Babel. So the concept of adaptability, designed adaptability, is less about how something looks and more about how it adapts to surviving in the environment or how it adapts to the environment. So we've always known that within the human genome, there is massive amounts of diversity. I mean, like you can have hundreds and thousands of babies without them being the same. There's that much diversity. And so we understand that we're all going to look different. And so that's even why, when you think about it, you have people groups like people in Africa, people in China, people in Russia, people in America, or that really probably wasn't really a group. But anyway, so you have all these different people groups. Well, if we all came from Adam and Eve, all those genes were in there. So you had all that diversity already designed in there. So as you go off to an island or you go off to this area over here, you go off over here, now you're actually cutting your gene pool short. Because now you only have this much option or this much diversity within the gene pool. And so now everybody's going to look whatever is left in this gene pool, okay? And so that's why you start to get people groups that look the same. Because that gene pool was separated off and isolated off. You can very easily, I mean, even in Scotland, I mean, you think about it, as an American, you tend to think about Scotland, you're like, everybody speaks with a Scottish accent. That's not true. You come here and there are people from all different places, and you're like, why don't you speak with a Scottish accent? That's not fair. And just because I want to hear people speak with a Scottish accent. But the truth is that as we continue to come back together and intermarry through the different races, right, that are not non-existent. As we continue to marry back in, we start to bring back in more option, more diversity into the gene pool. So it's all simple genetics. So don't confuse genetics per se with just adapting to the environment. That the diversity is there within the gene pool. The designed adaptability is simply adapting to the environment, sensing the environment, having the logic designed within them, and then having that output system that gives rapid targeted changes to adapt to the environment. How does the transposable element know when to move to the cortex? It gets an email. And we don't. So remember, I told you that we're at a level now where we've mapped the genome. We're getting really good at seeing what gene changed. What we're still trying to figure out is why they change. And that's why you'll see in some of these studies, there's a whole bunch of more studies about designed adaptability and stuff, where they'll say, well, this gene changed, and so it must have had some kind of random mutation. And then it's like, well, but then actually when we study it again, it changed back, and then it changed back, and it switches back and forth. So it must randomly be changing back and forth. No, if it switches back and forth, it's not random, okay? And so, but because we don't truly understand why it's switching, an evolutionist will always go with their narrative and say it must be some kind of random gene that's just switching back and forth. Whereas when you look at it, you go, well, clearly it's not random. Clearly it's going back and forth to specific points, and so it must be designed that way. So did that answer the question? I forgot which one. Oh, yeah, transposable elements, yeah. To be honest, the honest answer is we don't know. We really don't. Like I said, we're really good. We're getting good now at understanding what genes change, but we're still relatively new at understanding why they change. And that's why you're still getting a lot of that evolutionary random mutation. Whereas then when we study a little bit more, we find out that it's actually like those transposable elements. They've learned that those transposable elements are not random. They're actually designed. They're actually going back and forth specifically. Here's the where did the Dave. Okay, any other questions? Yeah, I'll get you next. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I think it was back in one of the other cards.
Oh.
About Cain and Abel. If Adam and Abel only had Cain and Abel, who did Cain and Abel marry?
Oh, so who did Cain marry? I would tell you if I was able. Okay. All right. So, did I make you proud, Dan? Did I make you proud? Okay. Excellent. Okay. So, I feel dirty. Okay. So with Cain and Abel, you think about it. So this goes into a little bit of history. So you think about who did they marry? Well, it's probably niece, sister, something like that. I mean, it's not like Adam and Eve only had 2 sons. Like the Bible goes on and says they had a whole bunch of kids. And so there was a large population, okay? And so the problem that people normally have is they say, ooh, he married his sister or he married his niece, and that's because we've been taught that that's a horrible, horrible thing, okay? And so just for anybody, I'm not saying that you should practice incest or anything like that. And here's the concept. That was outlawed by God at a certain point. You can find it, okay? And the reason is because when you have mutations, so when you have Adam and Eve, they have perfect DNA. As you start to get you start getting a load of mutations, there can be deleterious. Thank you. Not enough Coke Zero. It becomes bad, and because so I'm putting my hands up thinking, wait, what am I saying? So it becomes bad because if you have one person and another person from another family, most of the time those mutations don't match up. They're going to be different mutations, and so the body will get the better one and not the mutation and stuff like that. And so it's okay. If you continue to fish in the same pond, what you wind up doing is getting the same mutations. And so that mutation now becomes bad. And so you can get deformities, you can get diseases, all kinds of stuff. And so that's why it was eventually outlawed by God, because the DNA, the genome had become filled with mutations, and so he actually outlaws that. And so then now we just know that that's wrong and you can't do that. And so then when somebody says, hey, who married Cain, you say, I don't know. I'd tell you if I'm able. So that's why. Hopefully that makes sense. Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, to add on to that, because I think that's a great question. I'm thinking, well, but our bodies, that's making sense. I'm loving that bit about mutations, because they also lived hundreds and hundreds of years, which we can't possibly physically do now.
Yeah.
So there must have been something. So, yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Answered that for me.
Definitely. Anything else? Yeah.
Just a question again about the core, about how you were saying about the flood erupting where it marched over the land. It burst out the ground, that you were saying about the Red Sea pattern, that it would burst.
Burst forth, yeah.
What's like at the core? If it comes from the land, if it comes through, what is lying in the base of the core? How does water pressure come to the very ground?
So that goes to another question of, well, what burst forth? So we couldn't tell you exactly what burst forth, to be honest. I mean, if we're going to be honest, we weren't there, so we don't know what exactly burst forth. It probably would have been something. It could have been water, steam, liquid rock, molten lava, something to that effect. It would have been something like that. The global flood was also the only way you can get an ice age. So conventional scientists say, I don't know why you didn't ask this question, but I'm telling you anyway. So conventional scientists say there's many ice ages. There's lots of ice ages. We don't have evidence of lots of ice ages. And the problem is conventional science can't give you the right conditions for any. There's no evolutionary answer to an ice age. They can't give you one. Okay? The reason you need it, the reason we can give it to you is because you need to warm the oceans and you need to cool the land. Because that's going to increase the snowfall, the precipitation, and then that snow's not going to melt. Because it's cooled off, it won't melt on land. And so the only way you can do that is through the global flood, because the new ocean floor that's being created is going to heat up the ocean, and then as the aerosols come up from the volcanoes, it's going to cover, and you're going to actually cool off the air. You're going to heat up the oceans. That's the heated up oceans is going to cause more evaporation. It's going to cause precipitation and snow, and then when it lands, because it's cool, it's not going to melt off all that snow. Now, most people think an ice age, well, the whole world's covered with ice. No, it's usually not even the whole United States would cover with ice. Okay, you can see where the actual glaciers came through. They scrape rock and all that kind of stuff. You have to be careful because there's some differences there. But not even all of North America was covered with ice. But it was an ice age. There was an ice age based off those environment things. So, did that answer the question, or did I just go on a tangent? I can change this 2 seconds.
Just the difference with the geyser, because the geyser comes through like in Iceland, it comes through the ground.
Yeah.
It's the same principle, but the kind of fact, the point I was trying to make was because the Earth's core, underneath the Earth, there must be so much dense water, there must be so much water there created just to burst forth. So pressure, like taking it through, it causes the actual eruption from underneath to explode.
Right. So, well, you think about it, I mentioned that the earth was covered with water, and then the land appears, right? And so water goes underneath. We have massive amounts of water reservoirs. If something breaks open, molten lava comes up, it superheats that water, it turns into steam and shoots up. And so now, it may be in this form of steam, but what you're doing is shooting water up into the atmosphere. And so you're getting water, whether it's steam or water or just molten lava, you're getting water up into the atmosphere in some cases. And so I would say something like that. The actual combination of those two is probably going to get you that burst forth. Yeah.
I read an article in the Scientific American Journal that said, aside from the oceans and the landmass, they have evidence that underneath the crust of the earth is a volume of water greater than what is currently covering most of the earth.
Yeah.
So Scientific American Journal talks about...
Scientific America agrees with Dave Napier. That's what I got out of that. That's what I got out of that. Thank you. Anything else? Some of y'all probably need to go home. Anything else? Dan, you want to come up and finish this out?
Well, first off, we want to just thank Dave for coming. Two things before we kind of let you guys go. Three things. First, we have leftover sandwiches and fruit and muffins. They're in bags, so if you want to take one or two or all of them or whatever, they're there for you if you want them. Do you have some? Oh. You go.
I don't need your microphone.
That's right. You don't need me.
Sorry, I didn't mean it that way. That was
Okay.
No, just real quick. If you guys would, and I actually left our sign-up sheet. So ICR has Acts and Facts. Does anybody get Acts and Facts? Anybody know about it? Okay, excellent. That's good. That means everybody can sign up. So Acts and Facts is a full-color magazine that we send out in the United States to anybody who wants it. And so it's free to sign up. We send it out every 2 months. It's full color. It has all the latest science about creation versus evolution. It also gives update on the different events that we're doing and all that kind of stuff. So in the UK, we don't actually send out the actual magazine itself, but we do send digital copies. So you would actually get a digital copy in your email, and you would be able to read all those articles. I did not bring our sign up. So if you would, there's still note cards back there. If you would please put your name, email address, whatever else you want to give me on a card and leave it over there on that table.
Banking information.
Banking information, yes. Yeah. I got to get through England somehow. So if you would just leave it on that back table, when I go back, I'll put that in, and you'll start receiving Acts and Facts, a digital copy. So
Sweet. Awesome. So food there, the sign up for the newsletter. We also want to remind you, if you wanted to give to the conference, that'll go to ICR or to help with the offset of the food. Either of those boxes. The last thing is if you wanted to have more of this, right? Dave's going to be here tomorrow evening. Our service is at 5:00. You are welcome to come and join with us and have a more information, more about dinosaurs, I think it was, or fossil records. Cool. So you're welcome to come. If you're not a part of a church, or if you are part of a church, be in church tomorrow. Go someplace tomorrow. Go be in your have fellowship. I just want to throw that in there. If you're not a part, you're always welcome here. So that's what I would like to say. I just want to thank everyone for coming, being a part of this day. Again, a long time in the making, and so So let's. I'm sorry, I'm not in the camera shot. Sorry for people online. And those watching online, hopefully you enjoyed the day. So let me just close in prayer, and then we'll dismiss everybody. Father, we just love you, Lord. We thank you, God, for this day. Thank you, Lord, for your information that you've given us through the Scriptures, through science, through, Lord, men who have studied, and they look at it with just an open heart and open mind to know that you are the God of order, the God who has made all this, Lord God, for us, for our enjoyment. Lord, to see you, to see your handiwork. Lord, you said the heavens declare the glory of the Lord. And, Lord, we just thank you, Lord, that you've declared yourself. And I just pray that you would just take these things that we've learned or that we're kind of considering, and we would take them to heart, that we'd expand on that. We'd do our own more research even, and whatever it takes, Lord God. But I pray, and I just thank you, Lord, for this time. Just keep everybody safe as we head home. And, Lord, give us a blessed day tomorrow as well. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys, thank you.